Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
That's right. So I'll take your yearbook and I'll double down on an actual photo. You can take your forged yearbook and put it wherever you want. I got an actual photo here. What are the Democrats going to do? Seriously, what are the Democrats going to do? They're trying to get rid of two Republicans, and here comes this big hypocrite, Al Franken, totally gumming up the works, totally screwing up the plan. I mean, they want to get rid of Roy Moore, and they want to use that to get rid of Donald Trump, and here comes Franken, and there's an actual picture of Franken doing it. We got... While the woman is sleeping and she's wearing, camo gear on a C-17 on the way back from a USO tour. Greetings, folks. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh on the EIV network, the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative, Anti-Leftist, Anti-Media Studies. Telephone number 800-282-2882. This is a genuine dilemma for the Democrat Party. And I think I know what they're going to do, but I will withhold that prediction for a moment. In case you haven't heard about this, Al Franken, the esteemed senator from Minnesota, has been accused of massive sexual harassment and abuse by a woman who works on the radio in Los Angeles. She has been a model. She's a sports broadcaster as well. Her name is Leanne Tweeden. And she was on a USO tour with Franken back in 2006. And on this tour, she describes a circumstance where Franken demanded to rehearse a kiss that was going to be in the show, part of the show. He kept telling her, we actors, we rehearse everything. She said, I'm not going to kiss you. Well, we got to rehearse it. And he kept forcing himself on her and forcing himself, and finally jammed his tongue halfway down her throat. In the rehearsal, she refused to let it happen on stage in the actual show. She has now gone public with this on the website, the radio station where she works in the morning at KABC in Los Angeles. And there is a photo on the flight home on Christmas Eve of 2006. There is a photo of Al Franken cupping her breasts. Well, I wouldn't call it cupping, but he's either pretending to or it's the real thing. It looks like it's the real, and she's dead asleep. And he's got this big look at what I'm getting away with grin on his face. Now, this guy has been all over the place. When the Weinstein story breaks, there's old buddy Al making a big show of giving all the money Weinstein gave him to women's abuse centers. He has sponsored legislation that would penalize all kinds of bad activity against women. And you know what they say? A guy that gets caught doing it once doesn't just do it once. But here's the problem for the Democrats. The Democrats are going to town, disqualifying, trying to get rid of Roy Moore, and the Republicans have joined them in it. Everybody in Washington wants Roy Moore nowhere near that town. They are going into every weapons depot they've got for every weapon they've got against this guy. Republicans and Democrats alike. Now, the Democrats are doing this because they want the seat in Alabama. They don't want Roy Moore there, and they're using this as a pretext to get rid of Trump in future impeachment proceedings. Not Russia, not collusion, but this stuff. And that's another reason why so many of these journalists who gave Bill Clinton a pass are now turning tail and basically say, we blew it. We're too young then. We didn't really understand what was going on. We do now. What Bill Clinton did was horrible and terrible. They've got to do that if they're going to go after Trump. Now, one of the things that you're not seeing as they go after Bill Clinton is going after Hillary, but that's going to happen too, because they want to get rid of her. They don't want her any longer being the face of the Democrat Party. So in the midst of this, in the midst of creating this picture that this Republican is a prevert, a pervert, a creep, a scumbag, human debris, here comes old reliable Al Franken with an actual photo of the abuse. With Roy Moore, we have allegations and a possibly forged Haskell yearbook. With Trump, we have the Access Hollywood video where he's talking to Billy Bush about things, but there is no photographic evidence. With Al Franken, there is. They can't, and Mitch McConnell has already said that there needs to be a serious ethics committee investigation into Franken. The Democrats, what are they going to do here? They can't defend this. Although I wouldn't put it past them to try, given their close association and friendship with the drive-by media. But it really presents a problem, because this is something you can't ignore, because there's a photo of it. And everything that we've heard now in this effort to get rid of Moore, what is it? We got to believe the women. Everybody under the sun is saying the women don't lie. The women have to be believed. Everybody's saying it about the women involved with Roy Moore. Here comes Leanne Tweeden. Are they going to say, well, we need further investigation. We can't just take the woman's word for it. Are they going to do that? They can't do that. Well, I say they can't do. These people are capable of anything. Let's go to the audio soundbites. We'll start here with Leanne Tweeden herself this morning, KTTV, Los Angeles, Good Day, L.A., the co-host Steve. Is this a bunch that's always ragging on me, Cookie? Is this a TV station? So there's a TV station on there that rags on me all the time. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant to this. I'm just wondering if it's this bunch. I love them. You know, they're so infantile and off the mark when they rag on me. But and I've got to tell you, I actually called a company's customer service line today, and I can't wait to tell you this story. I called a customer service because I got an email from the company after I bought something from their website yesterday. I got an email. They demanded to hear from me, or asked to hear from me. But I've never experienced anything like this before. But obviously, that's for later on. Here is Leanne Tweeden talking with Steve Edwards at KTTV in Los Angeles. Take us through what happened on your USO tour with Al Franken in 2006.
He said, we really need to rehearse this scene. And I said, okay, I don't think we really need to rehearse this. And I sort of blew him off. And he said, no, we really need to rehearse the scene. And he really was very insistent and persistent. You know, in my mind, I was never going to kiss him on stage. I mean, it was just sort of like a gag thing. I said, okay, we'll practice the kiss, for goodness sakes, just to sort of shut him up. And he came at me, and before I even knew it, he put his hand on the back of my head and came towards me and mashed his face against my mouth and stuck his tongue in my mouth. And, you know, I sort of pushed him back and I said, don't ever do that to me again. And I was so angry.
Ooh, yuck. Gee, just imagining that. Yuck. Oh, my goodness. Huh. Well, her story wasn't finished. She continued after saying that Franken grabbed the back of her head and forcibly kissed her against her will. She filled in some of the other blanks.
I made sure I was never alone with him again. And on our way home, we're on a C-17 for the 36-hour trip for myself back home to L.A. I'm asleep on the plane, and the photographer of the trip was, you know, taking behind-the-scenes photos or whatever. And then I was given a photo that I didn't look at until I was home. And I'm asleep, literally on the plane, and there's a picture of Al Franken sort of doing this, grabbing my boobs, you know, over my flak vest and sort of looking at the camera and doing the smile so that I would see that when I got home. And, you know, it was just this sort of combination of, you know, sticking his tongue down my throat and then the photo that I would see after I got home and just sort of how he treated me on the entire trip.
If you want to see the photo, it's the lead item at the Drudge Report right now. And it is a leering Al Franken with a very confident, look what I'm getting away with, almost a childish Stuart Smalley kind of grin on his face. And he is clearly, well, I don't know, either pretending to or for real actually cupping. Well, it's not the fingertips are, let's say, shall we say, surrounding both. That's right. That's what it looks like. And so now there's photographic evidence. Now, Franken has apologized after saying he's been groped or groped her. Mitch McConnell's call for an ethics committee investigation after these allegations. As with all credible allegations of sexual harassment, this is clearly credible. There's a photo. I believe the ethics committee should review the matter. I hope a Democrat leadership will join me on this. Regardless of party, harassment and assault are completely unacceptable in the workplace or anywhere. I should have pointed Al Franken's a Democrat. Well, these stories don't mention that, folks. I'm sorry. They don't mention that he's a Democrat. The media, the Corinne Brown or whatever, there's a Democrat congresswoman who's going to be sentenced today or this week or something for a crime she committed. And the story does not mention she's a Democrat. The media leaves that out. Meanwhile, Franken apologized Thursday after Tweeden said that he groped and kissed her without her consent. According to Tweeden, Franken crafted a performance skit during the trip to make the anchor kiss him against her will. She felt disgusted and violated, tried to let it go, but he was angry. Franken said, I certainly don't remember the rehearsal for the skit in the same way, but I send my sincerest apologies to Leanne. As to the photo, it was clearly intended to be funny, but wasn't. I shouldn't have done it. Before Franken's statement on the accusations came out, fellow Minnesota Democrat Senator Amy Klobuchar said to reporters, I have just read them, and I am sure he will have a comment, and I will wait for that. Tweeden wrote today that I've decided it's time to tell my story. The incidences here are just way too widespread and prevalent, so she's coming forward, and as we all know, it'll be interesting to see if now there will be additional women coming forward, because this is what's happened. One came forward with Weinstein and the floodgates opened. And with Roy Moore, we had one or two from 38, 40 years ago, and now it seems like you can find a woman a day with Roy Moore. But again, Roy Moore got to go. No latitude, no leeway, not going to wait. Not going to wait to find out if any of this actually true. The allegations alone are enough. And everybody thinks that, by the way. It is an amazing, Mr. Newt yesterday talked about how rapidly they've been able to do this lynch mob. It is very, very encompassing. People across the political spectrum are not even interested in waiting to see if there's any truth to this. They just accept the word of the allegations made by the accusers because it's so many of them. So nobody's even waiting. So what are the Democrats going to do? Okay, let me approach this way. If you're the Democrat Party and you're the leader of that party, whoever that is, who is more valuable to you, Donald Trump or Al Franken? Now, wait. I throw Donald Trump in there because what is the objective? The real objective of the Democrat Party is to get rid of the guy. If the Democrats give Al Franken a pass, how in the world do they keep doubling down on Roy Moore and then amplify that against Donald Trump? In other words, would the Democrat Party be willing to throw Franken overboard in order to maintain the chance and the opportunity to get rid of Trump? As a Democrat governor that could appoint a Democrat replacement for Franken, they would not lose a seat if they send him packing. The one thing that can't happen anymore that used to, you remember when they wanted to get rid of Bob Torricelli in New Jersey? They had Bill Clinton call him. When they wanted to get rid of Andrew Cuomo, the first time they had Bill Clinton call these guys. Hey, Bob, how you doing, bud? You know, they got that video of you, pal, and I just don't think you can hang on. And I think if you try, do you like walking? Bobby, get up out of the chair whenever you want to go. So I think, Bobby, it'd be better for everybody if you just kind of quit. I don't know how we can say, come back for another day. But the same thing with Andrew Cuomo. They can't go to Clinton now. They can't have Clinton call Franken. Hey, Al, how was it? You know, I didn't know you and I had this in common. Actually, I did, Al. I've known you for a long time. But They can't use Clinton to get rid of these guys now, so what are they going to do? If they go to the mat to protect and save Franken, that has to have a negative impact on their utmost effort, their immediate effort to get rid of Judge Moore and then down the road, Donald Trump. Just ask yourself this. Here we've got evidence from a woman who we must believe now. That's the new rule. Women don't make up allegations like this, and they shouldn't, and they didn't, and they wouldn't, and we have to believe them. This is outrageous. You can't look at this without imagining everything else that's happened with all the others. Kevin Spacey, Weinstein. What is it about Franken that would get him a pass? Well, they've tried. Look, Weinstein tried that. That's not who I really am. They didn't let Weinstein get away with that. They don't let Kevin Spacey get away with that. They're not letting any of these guys get away with the usual, hey, it's just sex. It's nobody's business. It didn't affect my job. And in fact, she liked it. They're not letting any of that work for these other guys. So my point here is if they give Franken a pass, how do they continue to go after Roy Moore? Not that they couldn't do it. Hypocrisy has a tough time attaching itself to these people, but they've got a problem because they've got many, many eggs in this sexual harassment basket that they are using to get rid of people they don't want. Judge Moore at the top of the list currently on the Republican side, but there's one Republican versus all of these other people that are big-time liberal Democrat fundraisers, donors, bundlers, and now elected officials. Ponder that. And there's even more to this. Folks, when you start comparing some of the things that are happening this week, all of these journalists this past week who have been writing what a mistake they made giving Bill Clinton a pass 20 years ago. It was one of the biggest journalistic mistakes, and they're coming up with these excuses. Well, we were young then. We didn't realize the importance of this, and we really thought we were defending Clinton against a right-wing conspiracy, and all of this, yada, yada, yada. So after 3 or 4 days of throwing Bill Clinton overboard, how do they then try to save Al Franken and maintain the effort to get rid of Moore and maintain the effort to get rid of Trump later on down the road? And we're back. Rush Limbaugh, the fastest 3 hours in media. Now, if you look at that picture of Al Franken groping the breasts of Leanne Tweeden, you'll note that she's asleep. She has her eyes closed. It's the return flight from a USO tour in, I think, Afghanistan, some other place, 2006. And it's aboard a C-17, and she's asleep. Therefore, she could not have consented, and she didn't. And she's made it clear she didn't even know this was happening. And the photo was taken. Now, you have to juxtapose this against all week long these reporters, male and female, who were reporting and defending and trying to cover up Bill Clinton back during the Lewinsky days, primarily 1998, 1999. And one of these, and we didn't mention this aspect of it yesterday, Matthew Iglesias is one of these people who has been writing, and his piece, I forget where it appeared, doesn't really matter. One of the things that he admitted was that attacking Bill Clinton back then would have also been an attack on Hillary. And he admits that most people in American progressive politics have no desire to attack Hillary Clinton. So why are they throwing Clinton overboard now? Remembering that, who were they protecting Clinton from? The Republicans. They were protecting Clinton from the Republicans, and in the process, they were condemning and fostering and facilitating the Bimbo Eruptions team to destroy these women that Hillary Clinton was leading. But now there's no need. I guess they don't have any need to protect Bill Clinton from the Republicans anymore, because there's no need really to protect Hillary Clinton from the Republicans anymore. And so now to clear the decks and to say, you know what, we goofed up, we were wrong, they have to do this in order to be able to drop the hammer with credibility every day on Roy Moore. But now Al Franken worms his way into this. Folks, we're going to see how serious these journalists are in their mea culpas this week about time to get rid of Bill Clinton. Matthew Iglesias was writing for Fox. Bill Clinton should have resigned. What he did to Monica Lewinsky was wrong, and he should have paid the price. Okay, Matthew, you serious? Did you mean it? Because let's remember, 1 year ago, these very same people were salivating at the prospect of Bill Clinton becoming the first gentleman. They couldn't wait. They couldn't wait for Hillary to be elected president, and they were doing all kinds of stories on what would it mean to have the first male, first lady, first gentleman. What would it be? And they were all excited, and they just thought it was going to be the coolest thing. We're going to have the first female president and the first gentleman, and they were all, there wasn't anything. A year ago, 9 months ago, 6 months ago, there wasn't anything about Bill Clinton needs to pay the price. So what's changed? And arguably in the last month, maybe in the last 2 weeks, what has changed and how serious are they? Do they really mean it? Or is this just another phony baloney, plastic banana, good time rock and roller exercise to get their hypocrisy out of the way so they can continue to hammer Roy Moore and whatever or whoever other Republicans are brought up on similar allegations? They're all out there saying, this Clinton guy, we should have seen it then and we didn't. And like I say, many of them are saying, well, we were so young and we had stars in our eyes and we really believed the Clintons were good for America. We really believe vast right-wing conspiracy. What they're admitting is that they had to defend Bill Clinton against the enemy. The enemy was not the women. The enemy was the Republican Party. So apparently we've reached a point in time where that's no longer a top drawer concern, defending Bill Clinton against Republicans. There must have been something. There must be some things that have happened that have required them to do these mea culpas. Now we find out if they really mean it. One of the reasons they didn't go after Bill, of course, was that they would have to go after Hillary. And even now, as they go after Bill Clinton, they're not going after Hillary, but that shoe has to drop because Bill and Hillary were the blue plate special. Buy one, get one free. They promoted themselves that way, and that's how the drive-bys presented them. And they were all excited about it. I want to read to you Al Franken's statement, his strong condemnation of Harvey Weinstein when Weinstein's sexual predatory nature was revealed. Quote, "The women who have shared their stories about Harvey Weinstein over the last few days are incredibly brave. It takes a lot of courage to come forward, and we owe these women our thanks," said Al Franken. And as we hear more and more about Mr. Weinstein, it's important to remember that while his behavior was appalling, it is far too common. Franken added that the way women are treated when they go public with allegations of sexual misconduct both emboldened harassers and encouraged victims to stay silent. We must do something to address this all too common problem. Well, his problem is that there's a picture. His problem is there is a perfectly fine, high-resolution photo of Al Franken enjoying the groping with a sneaky smile on his face. And now Leanne Tweeden has come forward and provided the details of what's happened. Franken says he doesn't remember the rehearsal, but this is very sorry for what happened. Just trying to have fun in that picture. It realizes it doesn't look like that. I shouldn't have done it. I was just trying to have fun. October 6th, 2017. TwinCities.com. Al Franken, other Democrats shed contributions from Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. The Democrat Party condemns all forms of sexual harassment and assault, said the DNC communications director in an emailed statement. Al Franken, others shed contributions from Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein. In Franken's case, he sent the money over to women's crisis centers, women's abuse centers. Now, should those who donated money to Senator Franken demand their contributions back? If they don't, are they condoning sexual harassment and assault? I just got an email, by the way, from Melanie Morgan. Melanie Morgan's a former newscaster and talk show host at both KGO San Francisco and KSFO San Francisco. She runs a military charity now that packages items for U.S. troops overseas, raises money to assemble these packages, and ships them to our troops overseas. And she sent me a note claiming, you said, will other women come forward? Well, I will. She claims that Al Franken stalked her in 2000. And she is preparing, let me find, she writes at a website now called the MediaEqualizer.com, and she's at the moment preparing a story on this. So Melanie, who we all know, by the way, is now claiming to be another woman stalked by then-comedian Al Franken. Al Franken, by the way, said it was this USO trip that convinced him to run for the Senate in 2006. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, what are the Democrats going to do? There was to be a press conference that started about 20 minutes ago that was canceled. Senator Schumer and Senator Reid were going to do a press conference. I'm sure they were going to hammer the latest on Roy Moore and hammer the Republicans and basically demand the Republicans just leave town. You know, why don't you guys, you got more, just leave town. Why don't you just resign? All of you resign and just give us Washington, was going to be the subject of the press conference. I'm joking, but that's what their day-to-day objective is. And the Republicans sometimes make it look like that's what they're going to do, is just give the Democrats Washington. Mitch McConnell's demanding an ethics committee investigation into Franken. Chuck Schumer and Jack Reed have canceled their presser because apparently they didn't want to deal with questions. There's a big difference, too. When the first Roy Moore allegations came up, the Republicans beat the Democrats to the microphones and cameras to condemn the guy. Now that Al Franken has been implicated with photographic evidence, the Democrats have no interest in going to the cameras and microphones. I don't know if the Republicans do either. Okay, now, little Brian Stelter over at CNN, he's their media analyst. He's the guy that does reports on how well the media is doing for CNN. He's the Howard Kurtz, if you will, of CNN. And I guess that Brian is upset that I am not taking a leadership position with you in this audience in the effort to get rid of and bury Roy Moore. Brian is terribly upset that I have fallen back on my identifier as an entertainer and that I am shirking my obvious leadership role. He said this morning on CNN's New Day. By the way, CNN, right now, 2 more women say Roy Moore made unwanted overtures. And before that, CNN did a half-hour forum on tax reform. You can't find the Al Franken story on CNN. It's been there. I've seen it for scant seconds go by during the morning, but they're not focusing on it at all. So here's Brian Stelter this morning on CNN, worried about me.
The cliche that I see a lot of commentators holding on to. Hey, this isn't up to me, it's up to the voters. Well, actually, people like Rush Limbaugh, like him or not, they're viewed as leaders in this conservative media world. They are viewed as leaders by people like President Trump. We know that the president takes advice from these voices on radio and television. So I know they'd prefer to be entertainers, prefer to let the voters decide. But we're actually not seeing a lot of leadership from these hosts, from these commentators, which is notable given that Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan and other GOP leaders have spoken out. These hosts are accountable every day to their audience. They look at the ratings. They look at the page views. Maybe they're concerned that they don't know where their audience stands on this issue.
Brian, let me just one thing, Brian, of everything here. This is, if you forget everything I say, remember this. I always know where my audience is. Issue to issue to issue, to candidate to candidate to candidate. I always know where my audience is, Brian. That's why I am where I am. Plus, Brian, I have an audience to know where they are. Many people don't. Many people think they have an audience, but you could put them in a thimble, maybe a phone booth. There aren't phone booths anymore, but conjure your memory. No, seriously. He obviously has been waiting for me to jump on to condemn Roy Moore, and I haven't done it sufficiently for these people, so I am abrogating my responsibilities. I am falling back on the fact that I'm just an entertainer, that I have no business telling you people what to think on this issue. And I have a duty to assume that leadership role and tell you what Brian Stelter and CNN want to hear me say. He's worried about me. It's compassionate. Okay, I'm thinking here, Brian, of what I can do to maybe get back in your not good graces, but at least assume this leadership role. Let me do so in the Franken instance. Let me tell you what you ought to do. Brian, you need to make sure this story doesn't get short shrift at CNN. If you guys hope to get rid of Roy Moore, you're going to have to focus on Franken, and you're going to have to show that picture, and you're going to have to condemn it. You're going to have to condemn it with no doubts about what you're doing. You're going to have to condemn Franken's behavior. You're going to have to universally accept the words of Leanne Tweeden. You are going to have to demand that the Democrats do something about this guy because he poses a great danger to women and the Democrat Party and the objective to win back the White House. So as leader, as the Mr. Big in the vast right-wing conspiracy, Mr. Stelter, what you need to do is to convince the Democrats to throw Franken overboard. The Democrat governor of Minnesota will appoint another Democrat in his place, and you will not miss Franken, and you will not have a hypocrisy problem. You can do it by the end of the week. It will give you and the Democrats cover for anything you can and will and want to keep doing to Roy Moore. But if you want to keep going after Roy Moore, and if you want to then turn your attention to Trump, you have got to throw Al Franken overboard. You have got to convince your friends that Franken is nothing in terms of the overall quest of the Democrat Party. If you defend him, if you in any way try to differentiate what Franken is alleged to have done with Roy Moore or Weinstein or anybody else, you will not be able to sell future attacks on other Republicans that you wish to destroy. There, how's that? Welcome back, Rush Limbaugh, the cutting edge of societal evolution. Okay, a little time here. Let me tell you my customer service phone call story. I never do this because of my problems using the telephone. But there are exceptions to everything. A company called Belkin, which makes chargers and charger cables, just yesterday released a car charger that is high speed, 36 watts, the same fast charging of your iPhone that you can buy or your iPad. that you can buy from Apple. They've got it now in a car charger, 36 watts instead of 12. So I went onto their website and I ordered 5 of them. And I entered all the address information and the credit card information, and I submitted it. And I got here today, and I find out the spam folder had an email from them saying, please call us. We need to double-check your address information. So I got them on the phone, and I've never had this happen. What is your shipping address? I gave it's somebody from India. I gave them the shipping address. What is your billing address? I gave them the billing address. Why are they different? I said, what do you mean, why are they different? Why are you having them delivered to someplace other than your billing address? I said, because the billing address is a post office box, and I've selected overnight FedEx. But why are they different? I said, and why is it going to somebody's name who is not you? I said, because I am a powerful, influential person, and I don't want the delivery people to know I am where they're delivering this. Oh. Really? Yes. What did you think I was doing? Well, we have to guard against fraud. What possible fraud can there be? Well, we just never see this. A different billing address from a shipping... Really? You don't see a different... Nope. And then they said, why did you order 5 of them? I said, what? Yes. Why did you order 5? They're like $49. I don't remember what they... Why did you order 5? So I'm thinking, what can I tell them now? Because I know what they're thinking. You know what they're thinking? I'm going to sell them. Because most people only order 1. I said, because I have 5 cars, and I want one of these in every car. And there was a pause. Oh, 5 cars? Yeah. Do you want to know the make and model and year? Do you want the registration numbers? What else do you need? We're just trying to guard against fraud. And then they made me read back the addresses again, and then they made me read the credit card from memory. I could not read it. I had to recite it from memory before they would fulfill the order. And I still don't know if they're going to fulfill it. I have never had an experience like that with customer service. And, of course, I had to have them repeat sometimes what they were saying because I couldn't understand it. All of what I just told you took about 20 minutes to happen. Get this, Al Franken has joined the call for an ethics investigation into himself. I'll tell you what I think they're going to try to do here. I think they're going to try to skate. I think they are going to rely on the media dropping this and not covering this, and they're going to try to make it as though this didn't even happen. Mark my words. Greetings, my friends, and welcome. Rush Limbaugh meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day as broadcast excellence continues unabated for the next 2 busy broadcast hours, and they will be the fastest 2 hours in broadcasting in media anywhere. Telephone number, if you want to join us, 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email, lrushbo@eibnet.us. So the president just left the House, Capitol Hill, after a meet and greet with Republicans in the House. Their vote on the Republican tax bill is scheduled soon. That vote is pending. They are awaiting it. Pelosi is now speaking against it on the floor of the House. It's thought that it's going to pass the House, but when it gets over to the Senate, there are now 4 Republicans who have expressed concerns. And one of them is Ron Johnson, who says he's not really comfortable with the changes made on the pass-through. Now, once again, let me just undertake a brief explanation of the pass-through. It's nothing more than small business owners being permitted by tax law to file their small business taxes on their personal income tax return. They organize themselves as Subchapter S organizations or corporations, and as such, the new tax law would give them a tax rate of 25% down from the maximum 35 or 39.6. It's a significant rate reduction for those who file as subchapter S corps on their personal returns. They are allowed to pass the business funds through to their personal returns and file that way. Nothing new about that. That's been permissible for many moons. What's changing in the Republican tax bill is a pretty dramatic rate reduction of as much as 12%. Well, not 12%, but it's a reduction from 35 to 25 or 39.6, depending, to 25. Ron Johnson's upset with that. There are now 3 additional Republican senators expressing concerns about the tax bill, and not a single one of them is a surprise. Susan Collins of Maine, Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, and Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee. And before it's all done, we'll be able to throw Senator McCain in this bunch. And so if the bill passes in the House, which it is expected to do, it looks like the Senate, the Republican Senate, is set to torpedo this. And Senator Graham is running around saying, if this happens, if this doesn't pass, we can say goodbye to our majorities in 2018. And he may have a point. It's tough to forecast that far out because even if this thing goes down in flames, there are going to be all kinds of things that we cannot predict or foretell that will happen between now and Election Day of 2018. But this will not be good. To have once-in-a-lifetime majorities in the House and the Senate while controlling the White House and to not be able to get anything done. The voters would be excused if they started asking themselves for the final time, what is the point in voting Republican? Because nothing gets done. No promises are kept. It doesn't even look like there is an effort made to keep some of these promises, such as repealing Obamacare and now tax reform. And all of these things would be wildly beneficial to the American people, wildly beneficial to our country. And because of the necessity that many Republicans feel to sabotage Donald Trump, it looks like everything could come crashing down in gigantic failure. And you know what they'll say? Well, where was this great salesman? Where is the art of the deal? Where's Trump up here persuading us to vote for this? This guy's not what they said he was. He's not what he said he was. This guy, he hadn't even been on stage here. This guy's and that's how they'll cover it. They'll throw it off on Trump and try to. What they do not understand is that they will not be able to separate Trump from his voters. And I think that remains an objective, certainly on the part of the media, but I think many Republicans are trying to do the same thing, and they're not going to be able to do it. Trump is out hitting home runs every day. He's hitting home runs on his foreign policy trips. He's hitting home runs with his speeches, his domestic proposals. The things that he can do without Congress are great, and they're showing great promise, already great results in deregulation, keeping America out of these silly United Nations schemes that intend to fleece us, like climate change and what have you. Trump will not be blamed by people that voted for him if the tax bill goes down in flames, and they will not be blamed. He will not be blamed for Obamacare's failure. I don't care how hard the Republicans try to blame it on him, and they most certainly will. Exactly as I just told you they will. Now back to the Franken situation. Al Franken is now calling for an investigation into himself, saying that women need to be believed. Women need to be applauded for their courage in coming forward. They need to have their stories heard. It is much more important that these women's bravery be acknowledged over what anybody thinks of Al Franken. So Franken is throwing himself on the fire. What will the Democrats do? I think what they're going to do is try to pretend this isn't happening. The smart thing for them to do would be to get rid of Franken. Have the governor of Minnesota appoint a Democrat to replace him. You don't miss or lose a seat this way. And in so doing, You make yourself bulletproof in your effort to get rid of Roy Moore. You make yourself bulletproof in your effort to get rid of Trump. But if they go in the other direction and try to protect and harbor a man accused of sexual harassment with a photo to prove it, if they try to save that guy, if they try to harbor him, keep him there by running out the clock or by relying on the media to not report it, which I think they might do. I think they might have full confidence that the media will ignore this, stay focused on Moore, stay focused on Trump, stay focused on anything, and just ignore the Franken circumstance. Now, that's a risky move because there is social media, which will pick up any slack. And, of course, we will pick up any slack here. But this is why I think that might be the objective. I want to play for you some audio sound bites. Before we get to media soundbites, there's one of Franken himself. This is from 7 years ago, September 21st, 2010, 21st of 2010. This is a speech on the Senate floor where Franken is talking about Leanne Tweeden, who is the woman who has accused him of sticking his tongue halfway down her throat, and about whom the photo was taken with Al Franken groping her breasts while she slept on a C-17 on the way back to L.A. from Afghanistan. This is Al Franken, September 21st, 2010, on the Senate floor.
I was kind of the co-host with a beautiful woman named Leanne Tweeden. And we do comedy routines, and we'd introduce music, we'd introduce cheerleaders. I'd go out and do a monologue. This is something I would do, I'd done for a number of years.
And it is one of those USO tours where Leanne Tweeden alleges that Franken demanded to rehearse the kiss that was not going to happen. There was not going to be a kiss during the show, but he said it was in the script that he wrote. And he said to her that, look, all of us actors, we rehearse everything. We have to rehearse it, and I want to rehearse the kiss. And she tried to say, no, there's going to be a kiss. I'm not going to rehearse it. He kept insisting, so she went along with it to shut him down. He grabbed her by the back of her head and stuck his tongue down her throat. And she appropriately went, yuck! And the kiss did not happen. When he tried it on stage, he actually, according to her, tried it on stage. She put her hand over her mouth and looked away during the actual performance that Franken was talking about there on the USO show. So when this news broke today, CNN was apoplectic. And after they played the Leanne Tweeden soundbites from Los Angeles TV this morning describing what happened, CNN national political reporter M.J. Lee spoke with anchor Kate Baldwin about Tweeden's allegations, and this is the exchange that they had.
What is really interesting about this and really important about this, Kate, of course, is that this is a member of Congress, a sitting member of Congress who is now being named. What's interesting is that Tweeden, who wrote about this account, actually said that she met with Congresswoman Speer a couple of weeks ago, and when she heard Congresswoman Speer actually tell her own story about, being on the receiving end of sexual harassment herself on Capitol Hill, that was an important moment in which Tweeden decided this is exactly what I myself experienced back in 2006. Kate?
All right, MJ Lee on the Hill for us covering this. This is all just starting to come in. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let's head to Alabama right now.
So there was the story from the reporter with all the details and the possible things that could go wrong here. And, oh, my gosh, what a problem we've got. And the CNN info babe, thank you. Glad you got that. And now let's go to Alabama. Now let's really focus back on Roy Moore. Had no desire for any more information about Al Franken. But later on, CNN impaneled a group of people who ended up being in agony over this, and they were very, very worried about the implications. Dana Bash, speaking with Margaret Talev of Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, Michael Bender, about all of this. Dana Bash says, Margaret, what's your reaction to the Leanne Tweeden story about Franken?
I think it's shocking, his statement here. This is not a full-throated apology. Franken's in this sort of overlay here. We now see that this is a part of the culture in Hollywood, which he was a part of.
Wait just a second. That's not the right bite. We need number 26 here.
Whether he stays in that race, whether the debate or discussion about his past actions in Alabama are now diffused or kind of divided, whether it becomes Al Franken versus Roy Moore instead of Roy Moore versus himself. The nature of the allegations is certainly different, both in terms of volume and in terms of specifics, the age of the person, the nature of the accusations, and the fact that the person who's being accused in one case has suggested he doesn't know these people or that their reports are false. In the other case, naming the person by name and apologizing immediately, at least for the fact that they were uncomfortable. So I think they're different, but politically, you can see how this all becomes one thing.
They're very worried about this. Did you see what this woman tried to do? This was Margaret Talev, and she is Bloomberg. And what she said, well, you know, whether it becomes Franken versus Moore instead of Moore versus Moore, the nature of the allegations is certainly different in terms of volume and specifics. So what she's saying is Moore is far worse than Franken. Look at all the women so far with Moore. There's only one of them here with Franken. And, of course, we've got many more specifics on Moore than we do with Franken. So Moore is much, much worse than Franken. They're trying, even this morning on CNN, to balance this in such a way as to enable them not to go after Franken. Then she went further. The age of the person, the nature of the accusations, the person who's being accused has suggested he doesn't know these people, the reports are false, and then versus Franken, who's apologizing immediately, versus Roy Moore, who's not. So you can see they're trying to set up here some differences that would warrant them or excuse them going easy on Franken. Now, the next soundbite's Michael Bender, the Wall Street Journal. And see, where is the Dana Bash said, look, Senator Franken's one of many politicians who condemned Harvey Weinstein. He put a statement on Facebook when he said, as we hear more and more about Mr. Weinstein, it's important to remember while his behavior was appalling, it is far too common. What do you think about that, Michael?
I think it's shocking, his statement here. This is not a full-throated apology. Franken's in this sort of overlay here. We now see that this is a part of the culture in Hollywood, which he was a part of. We know this is part of the culture on Capitol Hill. Franken is at the center of both of these, and he comes out with the statements today with a half apology saying that's not quite the way he remembers it. Well, the point is that that's the way she remembers it. I think he's going to have a lot of trouble getting away with trying to parse this, that the way she remembers it is different or the way it wasn't intended. That's beside the point. I think this helps the Roy Moore. I think this gives credence to those accusations. Now this is not just an attack on a Republican candidate. There's bipartisan accusations. This is not a partisan issue.
Well, that may be wishful thinking. Well, his point here is this helps the Roy Moore allegation. This helps the Roy Moore search and destroy mission, because now we can say to people, it's not just he's a Republican that we're going after him. We're going after him because he's a reprobate. And it's going to help us do that now that a Democrat's joined the fray and has been accused of this. And, of course, he's acknowledging here that where we are with this today, the women are believed. It doesn't matter what Franken thinks. It doesn't matter what he remembers. It doesn't matter at all. It matters what she remembers. It matters what she thinks. It matters how she felt. And so now that we have a Democrat in the crosshairs, that's going to help us go after more. That was his point. Well, yeah. If they actually go after Franken, that remains to be seen. Because I can tell you, and do not doubt me on this, if they have the slightest chance, if they foresee the slightest opportunity to give Franken a pass on this, they're going to do it. They will not just sit idly by and let Franken be taken out by anybody. If they can maintain this dogged pursuit of Roy Moore while giving Franken a pass, if they think they can pull that off, they will do it. Do not doubt me. They are hypocrites from the first day of the sun. We will get to your phone calls in the next segment. You know, what is happening now is that people are finding things in the past in news archives and other places about Al Franken that confirm and back up the behavior noted today in the story by Leanne Tweeden. And as you go through these things, you ask yourself, how in the world did this guy get past any of this? Who overlooked this? The guy runs for the Senate, he gets overlooked. He becomes a big spokesman for the Clinton White House, traveling with Clinton, making speeches, and he's always been a reprobate. We learned that he has always been a dubious character reprobate, and that everybody knew it and looked the other way because it was Al Franken and he's a comedian. Before Franken was a senator, he was a writer on Saturday Night Live. And one time he wrote a script. They didn't air it, but he was in the writer's room writing potential skits for a show, and he joked about raping Leslie Stahl. A New York Magazine report, 1995, from a writing session that Franken was in on. Franken said, and I give the pills to Leslie Stahl, and then when Leslie's passed out, I take her to the closet and rape her. Or, well, that's why you never see Leslie until February. Or when she passes out, I put her in various positions and take pictures of her. This is from a writing session from somebody who was there, a reporter that sat in on it. A reporter watched this, knew all of these years what Al Franken fantasizes about, raping Leslie Stahl. Or if he doesn't rape her, when she passes out after I give her the pills, I put her in various positions and take pictures of her. We've got a picture. We got Al Franken taking a picture, or in a picture of a sleeping woman while he feels her up. That is one instance. Newsweek, Al Franken has a long history of sexual misconduct jokes before accusations of groping women's breasts. Franken rose to fame as a comedian for a writer, Saturday Night Live, and some of his quips and performances were touchy subjects well before he ran for the Senate. He laid out a scene in one proposed skit where Carl Reiner would invite famous friends over to rape his son. On a typical night, Carl would slip into Rob's bed, roll him over, swab him down, and say something like, I'm thinking about hiring Maury Amsterdam to play Buddy Sorrell. What do you think? Anyway, folks, who knew? Everybody knew this kind of stuff that knew him. Senator Franken continues to release statements that get more confusing and self-focused with each one. And we're dealing with somebody here who's not all there, folks. It's becoming glaringly obvious, and probably has been to a lot of people for a long time. And that's the thing. This guy has been sick, a perverted puppy for many, many moons. Look at all the people who had to be aware of this. I mean, writing jokes in the comedy writing room about raping Leslie Stahl, or having Rob Reiner be raped by his dad in a skit they were doing on the old Mary Tyler Moore show. I mean, what? And now these statements, well, I apologize. I really respect women who come forward. I really think I need to be investigated. I would cooperate with any investigation. It's not about me. I think women ought to be believed. Women are courageous in doing this. It's confusing. Okay, to the phones. Time to get started there. And here is Joe in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Great to have you, sir.
Good afternoon, Rush.
Afternoon. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. And yourself?
Very well. Appreciate it.
I guess we can safely assume that the sexual revolution of the 1960s is now over.
Why would you think that it's over?
Bill Clinton, Al Franken.
You think Bill Clinton stopped behaving the way he behaves?
Hell no.
Well, then it's not over.
The Democrats just stopped caring about him. Him and Hillary, they're irrelevant. They're done. They're finished. They're yesterday's news. It's time to move on. Hillary, she's like Madonna in a Katy Perry world now. She was the election. That's one of the reasons why she got trounced and still can't believe it. She's living in a fantasy world.
Well, she's not going away just yet. I mean, you may be right that the Democrats would like to kind of sweep her out of the way, but they are still very relevant, and they're doing everything they can to forestall any investigation into her or Bill or the charity or the Uranium One deal or any of these things. They are by no means gone away. Now, your comment about the sexual revolution, though, is an interesting comment. Does this signal its end? Does all of these people getting caught, is this going to have a remedial effect on those who haven't been caught? Because I'll tell you something, folks. These are just the people we know of that have been caught, but you don't think it's stopped, do you? It's still happening out there, and it's going to continue to happen. And the question is going to become, at what point, and we may be in the process now where women are asserting themselves to the point that enough fear is created that this kind of behavior does end. But the bigger question for me is just who is engaging in this kind of behavior? Who are the abusers? Who are the sexual harassers? This is a question the media doesn't want to answer. This is a question the Democrat Party doesn't want to look to. They don't want anybody digging deep to find out whether there is actually partisanship to this. They're doing everything they can to make it look like if anybody like me comes along and says, you know, as Roy Moore was a Democrat back when he did all, look at the reaction that got. They had a conniption fit because they thought that I was suggesting that he got away with it all those years because he was a Democrat and the Democrats don't hold each other to standards. Well, that may be true. That was not my point. I was just throwing a little factoid, but look at their reaction to it. So they're highly sensitive to this. They are from the culture that mistreats women. They are from the culture that sponsors and rewards this kind of treatment of women and behavior of women. So, well, here's the thing. Is the Mad Men culture still around? Did the Mad Men culture ever really go away? I mean, what are we looking here if this is not the Mad Men culture and it's happening in Hollywood? Okay, Mad Men was New York advertising agencies, but this is Hollywood. Did the behavior ever go away? Is this really anything new, or has this been common behavior between men and women from the beginning? Remember, it's all now been politicized. Once you politicize this stuff, it totally changes everybody's perception of it. And we can thank the left for that as well. They have literally corrupted everything. But there's so much hypocrisy and phoniness in these people on the left. They mock. Look at making fun of Mike Pence for making sure that he takes steps not to be in circumstances where this kind of thing can happen. And they laugh at him, and they make fun of him, and they accuse him of discriminating against women, by the way. They say, that's not fair for women. I mean, he's a powerful man, and if he refuses to have meetings with women, then they don't have a chance to advance. So they make fun of a guy who practices the morality that he believes, and they claim that it is discrimination against women. Then when this stuff comes along, they do everything they can to distance themselves from it and try to make it appear as isolated as it can be so that it doesn't touch on them. But this is the culture they promote. This is the culture they have demanded and sought. They have gotten what they want. This is what you get when the guardrails vanish from the highway. This is what you get when boundaries dissolve. This is what you get when there's no morality. This is what you get when nobody has the right to say what's right and wrong. This is what you get And who is it that's always been trying to say that? Largely, it's the Christian conservative community that's been trying to establish these boundaries of morality and virtue. And who's been laughing at it all of these years? Who's been trying to tear it down? Who's been trying to destroy those that believe in it? Who? It's these people. The Al Frankens of the world, the Harvey Weinsteins, the George, you name them, everybody we know now. And that's why they're harping on Roy Moore, because they finally have a Republican they can focus all this on and take the attention off of themselves, because this is liberalism. This is what it is. This is progressivism. Call it free love, call it whatever they called it back in the 60s. But this is what it. Bill Clinton lived the life, and they applauded it, and they awarded it, and they promoted it. Until this week, when they thought best to start condemning it. But that's only because they've politicized everything. So these people, in large part, are engaging in what is truly destructive and damaging to others' behavior, while spending all of their time condemning people that do not do this, and making them out to be odd and kooky and weird and nerdy. And these have always been the cool kids. These have always been the hipsters. These have been the people in the big clique. This has been the establishment. This has been the elites. And we find out that half of it exists because it's phony, that they're really not pro-choice. They just learned from Bill Clinton. If women are offering him Lewinsky's for keeping abortion legal, then what are they going to do? They're going to make it like they believe abortion ought to be happening every day, too. If that's how you get women to be pro-choice, that's what they're going to do. So it's phoniness built on a lack of virtue, combined with no values or guardrails or morality. And is it any wonder you get a cesspool of Sodom and Gomorrah? So it's not over. Sex revolution is not over. We haven't even begun to learn the depths of this depravity and the impact that it is having and has had. Because these are the kinds of people that are teaching in many places, in universities, middle school, you name it. These people are everywhere. I got to take a break. I'm a little long here, folks, but hang on. We will continue in a moment. That was a mistrial in the Senator Menendez case, and he's now pontificating about what a wrong case it was, a bad trial, a bad prosecution, FBI out of control. He says, the FBI just refused to believe that a young Latino kid could ever amount to anything like U.S. Senator and be honest. So the FBI was running around asking people, what do you have on Menendez? Give us anything. We'll take anything you got on Menendez. Mistrial, mishmile. I have a question, ladies and gentlemen. How many Washington Post reporters are now swarming Hollywood and Minnesota looking for decades-old information on Al Franken? Well, they're all over Alabama. They all got visas, and they went into Alabama. They went hunting. Remember, like John Kerry, is this where I get me a hunting license? So a bunch of reporters applied for hunting licenses in Alabama. The Washington Post even ran a robocall operation asking for dirt on Roy Moore. They're denying that, claiming they're offended. Anybody would ever think they would run their operation like that. Right. Just how many Washington Post reporters anywhere are swarming Hollywood and Minnesota, offering people to come forward with stories about Al Franken? Because, you know, we have to root out these people. Like, we have to root out Roy Moore and perverts like that. How many of the drive-by medias are looking this on? I'll tell you what else, though. If what has popped up today about Franken just in a couple of hours, if that keeps popping up, you know, you got now, what is it, Senator Schumer? What is this? Senator Schumer calls for an ethics probe of Franken. That's a delaying. What do we need ethics probe? What do we need an ethics probe for? We've got a picture. We've got the evidence, and we have the woman with the story, and the women do not lie. We'll see how this shakes out. But I bet you're going to hear a lot more stories of Franken, because they're going to be plentiful. Here's Max in Houston. Max, welcome. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Thank you, Rush. I have the opinion that the Democrats are going to sacrifice Al Franken. They're not going to defend him at all. And in fact, I think the fact that he's coming out and saying that he should be investigated makes him possibly complicit in it. I think that they're going to offer him up as a sacrifice.
Why?
To prove that they are serious about condemning sexual misconduct so that they can burn out Roy Moore and they can use the Saul Alinsky tactic of the freeze out to go after Donald Trump and anything that he stands for.
Well, I have to tell you, I suggested to Brian Stelter today when he demanded leadership from me. He says, I've been skating lately on Moore, that I have been relying on the fact I'm just an entertainer. He's been demanding leadership. So I said, okay, try this for leadership. You people need to throw Franken overboard. You're not going to lose the seat. You got a Democrat governor can appoint his replacement. But if you don't throw Franken overboard, how do you continue to go after Moore like you are? And how do you go after Trump later on? If you give this guy a pass, if you try to draw any distinction whatsoever and say that what Franken did is nowhere near in Moore's league, you guys are going to have big, big trouble. So you would think, but there's a big difference in Republicans and Democrats. They do not throw their people overboard, except if it's the last option available. Okay, the House tax reform bill passed. That was expected, but it has passed. They actually voted to do something there. Al Franken, Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein. You'll find pictures. They all have something in common, folks. Bill Clinton. Back in a moment. April 16th, 1976, Al Franken at Harvard. Was it 76? Hang on here just a second, folks. This computer's off. April 16th, 1976, Al Franken, this is a story posted in the Harvard Crimson school newspaper. I just don't like homosexuals. I was glad when that homosexual got killed. That's what Franken said in this Harvard Crimson story. Drudge has pulled that quote out of this story, and that's the link at the Drudge report. The Leslie Stahl rape story that he wanted to write a skit about him raping Leslie Stahl after giving her a bunch of pills. That story is popping up now. And like I say, I'm certain, folks, that the New York Times and Washington Post have reporters now dispatched to Hollywood and New York and Minnesota to dig up all of the dirt on Al Franken. Not. But it's going to continue to surface. We are here at 800-282-2882 and the email address lrushmo@eibnet.us. If you want to appear on the program, we'll get to more phone calls in this hour. Leanne Tweeden, who is the woman, has gone public with the sexual harassment and abuse visited upon her by Al Franken in 2006 on the USO tour, has spoken up more, and CNN has been forced to carry this. This was actually, I think, around 1:30 this afternoon, half hour ago. She's a radio TV host in L.A. and a model. She's a sportscaster, and she's done a bunch of USO tours in which Franken was the headliner, which is where the sexual abuse that's been reported today happened. We have a couple more sound bites of her describing this.
He had his little props for the rest of his little skits by himself. And he's like, well, we need to practice the kissing scene. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I just sort of blew him off because I didn't, we don't need to practice the kissing scene. It's just a quick little thing, you know. And then he persisted, and he's like, no, we really need to practice the kissing scene. And, okay, Al, you just turn your head right, I'll turn my head right, we got this, you know, whatever. And he kept persisting. And I'm like, Al, this isn't SNL. We're not really going to kiss, so we don't really have to practice. And he just kept persisting. And it just reminded me of, like, the Harvey Weinstein tape that you heard the girl when she was wired up for the NYPD. And he just persistent and badgering and just relentless, you know. And so I was just like, okay, fine, just so he would shut up.
Now, what if you're the Democrats and they're willing accomplices in the drive-by media, and you're airing this and you're hearing this. What must you be thinking? I mean, up until this morning when this broke, you were on the verge of taking out Roy Moore and winning the seat in Alabama. And now this has happened. And now what do you do? If you are the media and the Democrat Party, they're co-equal players in this. Don't think the media is following this. The media is leading this, as they do everything today when it comes to progressive or liberal politics. And this is a giant, giant dilemma for them. Now there's talk of a ethics investigation, which is a stalling and delay tactic. You know how long those things take. You know, I might even say, okay, if you're going to do an ethics investigation of Franken, then let's postpone the election in Alabama until Franken's ethics investigation is over. If you're going to give Franken a whole lot of time to rewrite history here, let's be fair and sustainable, and let's extend the same opportunity to Judge Moore. We can reschedule that election down there. The governor can do what he wants to do. Of course, that'll never happen, but I'm just trying to point out the hypocrisies here. I know they don't stick to Democrats. They get away with their hypocrisies, but there's only two ways they can go here. The smart way would be to realize that their objective is to get Donald Trump. You and I know that's what they want to do. That's their whole purpose. And they've gone from collusion with Russia to Fusion GPS to Trump dossier, now to Roy Moore. And after they get rid of Moore, then they turn their sights on Trump. Okay? If they don't get rid of Franken, how in the world do they go after Moore and Trump with total credibility? If they in any way try to defend Franken and engineer it so that, well, what he did's not nearly as bad as Moore, and what he and what he hasn't done it in a long time, but whatever. If they try to rationalize it in any way, they've got to know they've got a problem. Getting rid of Franken is the simplest, easiest thing to do. They won't lose the Senate seat. They will gain credibility. It will open the doors for further direct action against Roy Moore, because they'll be able to say, look, when it came up and when it happened and we found out about it, we got rid of the case immediately. We got rid of our bad actor inside of 3 days. And look what the Republicans are doing. The Republicans are trying to hang on and protect this guy. That would be the smart play for them. But they also have another instinct, and that is they do not give up their people like we do. The Republicans were first to the cameras and microphones to get rid of Roy Moore. The Democrats do not do that. It's a last hope. It's the very last option where they actually throw their own people under the bus. But they may be forced into doing this as more and more stories about Franken surface. Here's more from Leanne Tweeden as she continues to describe what happened.
We did the line, and he came at me, and before you even know it, I mean, you kind of get close, and he just put his hand on the back of my head, and he mashed his face against, I mean, it happened so fast, and he just mashed his lips against my face, and he stuck his tongue in my mouth so fast. And all I can remember is that his lips were really wet, and it was slimy. In my mind, I called him fish lips the rest of the trip because that's just what it reminded me of. I don't know why. And he stuck his tongue down my mouth, and I remember I pushed him off with my hands. And I just remember I almost punched him, because every time I see him now, like, my hands clench into fists, and I'm sure that's probably why. And I said, if you ever do that to me again, I'm not going to be so nice about it the second time. And I just walked out away from him, and I walked out, and I just wanted to find a bathroom, and I just wanted to rinse my mouth out because I was just disgusted. You know, it was just one of those, I don't know, I was violated. I just felt like, you know, he betrayed my trust.
And then on the flight home, she had fallen asleep while sitting, and she is in military gear. She's wearing a helmet, what looks like a camo vest, and there's Franken feeling her boobs while a photo of it is taken with a leering, sneering smile, like a sixth grader getting away with something. And it's just photographic evidence. Evidence they don't have, by the way, in the Roy Moore case. They've got actual photographic evidence here on Franken. So that's the status. Franken's now joining the call for himself to be investigated, saying that women need to be believed. He doesn't remember the rehearsal the way she does, but he's certain that she's convinced it happened that way. But he doesn't treat women this way, and he doesn't respect men who do, which is an absolute crock, because he respected and traveled with Bill Clinton any time, any place that he could. He was part of that crowd. I don't respect men who do, which is an absolute lie. These guys are thick as thieves. And I'll tell you, one of the frustrating things is they've gotten away presenting themselves as the definition of morality when it comes to women. They're the ones that know how to treat women. They're the ones that are pro-choice. They understand women's issues. They understand this. And they have no more respect for women than they've got for their ordinary, everyday fans. And it's another instance of massive hypocrisy, and it's all frustrating because the hypocrisy very seldom sticks to the Democrats on this. Now, this leads, it's got a whole stack of Bill Clinton stuff. In the midst of this happening, don't forget, we've got the drive-by media continuing to write their mea culpas on how they were really wrong in giving Bill Clinton a pass back in 1997 and 1998, 1999, that they should have realized. They should have condemned what Clinton was doing, but they just were so young, and they weren't old enough to know how really bad it was. This is what some of the reporters today are saying. And they're saying that we really couldn't go after Clinton because that would have been helping the enemy being the Republicans. And they also couldn't go after Clinton because that would have meant going after Hillary, and that would have meant going after the Democrat Party future. So they circled the wagons around Clinton and turned Ken Starr into the sex pervert. And Clarence Thomas tried to destroy all of these genuinely fine people. And yet look at who they really are. Daily Caller with a story. New York Times could not find any Democrats to defend former President Clinton in an article revisiting the sexual harassment and rape claims against him. The flood of sexual harassment accusations against prominent figures like Harvey Weinstein and Roy Moore has forced many members of the establishment media to revisit the litany of accusations against Clinton. In an article published last night, the New York Times' Peter Baker noted he couldn't find anybody, including Bill Clinton, to speak on the record in defense of Bill Clinton. Imagine that. What has happened to the Democrat Party when not a single Democrat can be found today to defend Bill Clinton? That means they want the Clintons gone and they want Hillary gone. But the problem with that is that Hillary isn't going to go anywhere willingly. They're going to have to drag her off the stage. She is not going to willingly go. Since I haven't had a chance to get too many phone calls today, let me get to one now. We normally don't take calls in the monologue segment of the hour, but I want to get to the phones because people have been waiting patiently here for quite a while. So we go to Cedar Rapids. This is Ken. It's great to have you, and I appreciate your patience. How you doing?
Hey, Rush. Great to talk to you. Three generations of my family have been listening to your show, so very cool here. But I'm just confused, Rush, on the establishment Republicans and Mitch McConnell's play on Roy Moore. I mean, what is he doing? If it's like the Franken situation and the worst case scenario is, they boot Franken and the governor appoints a new Democrat, how is that any different with Roy Moore? Why are we risking a write-in, campaign or something of that nature when we could just get Roy in, let the people of Alabama have their say and do an investigation? If he's a creep, boot him, and the governor puts in a new Republican. It doesn't make any sense to me.
You know, that has the makings of an actually quite good question. What do you think the answer is? Because there is an answer to that.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, you think Bannon has something to do with it?
No. Well, yeah.
I think Mitch is that mad at Bannon that he's like,
Yeah. But that's not the main reason. That's an ancillary reason. Mitch McConnell gets to send a signal to Steve Bannon. Oh, you really think you're going to get rid of me, buddy? Ha ha! Watch this. But there's another reason why. They would be doing this even if Bannon hadn't chosen Moore, even if Steve Bannon hadn't identified Moore as his guy. And the answer is what it always is. The Republicans are scared to death of the media. And so at the first allegation of Roy Moore, whatever he is, the Republicans have been so condemned for so long that I think they've got PTSD about this. I think they think that everybody believes what the media has said about Republicans for years and years and years. So they think they have to speak up often and loud to try to convince voters that they're not anti-woman, anti-gay, anti-immigrant, anti-black, anti-this. So Roy Moore situation happens, the news is reported, and the Republicans think they have to be first to the microphones to condemn it in order to show the media is wrong about who they are. It's totally defensive. This move is entirely defensive. It's aimed at trying to dispel conventional wisdom about Republicans that they think the media has succeeded in convincing people.
That's just disappointing, Rush. You'd think these guys would learn that, from all the people we've put in office, from all the voting that's gone down, all the support for Trump and everybody else, you think these guys would learn to stand up to what the media keeps pushing. It just goes to show how influential these guys in the media actually are.
They don't want to be at war with the media. They don't want to be at war with the media like Trump is. They want to get along with the media. We're talking establishment personalities here. We're talking about people that live and work in Washington, and no matter what party they're from, they all want to work together, get along with each other. They want the media to like them. They don't want to be at war with the media. They really don't even want to be at war with the Democrats, if you get right down to it. The whole notion of being on offense and attacking is not what they want. And so it could be Roy Moore, it could be anybody else. When there are allegations of this kind of thing that surface, the Republicans are going to be the first to condemn it, thinking that if they don't, that voters are going to think they support it and that all Republicans are like Roy Moore. Look, the simplest, most concise answer to your question is this is what happens when you are constantly playing defense. Back after this. Judge Roy Moore in Alabama has hit Mitch McConnell. This is interesting. Al Franken admits guilt after photographic evidence of his abuse surfaces, and Mitch says, let's investigate. In Alabama, zero evidence, allegations 100% rejected, and Mitch says Moore must quit immediately or be expelled. These are tweets from Roy Moore. You have to say he's got a point. Al Franken admits it. There's a photograph. He doesn't dispute it at all. And Mitch says we need an ethics panel. Everybody knows that's a year. A year. And an election year to boot an ethics panel? That means nothing's going to happen to Franken. And yet with no evidence, and in fact a bunch of now false allegations against Judge Moore, Mitch says he's got to quit. We got to not count his nomination. If he gets elected, we've got to decertify the election. And he's got a point. By the way, grab soundbite number 8. There's a story. I can't explain this other than to chalk it up to instincts. I've had people in the studio here. How come you're not mentioning the mall? The mall, that's what made me convinced he was guilty when the mall banned him. And for some reason, it didn't make sense to me. So much, folks, I so distrust everything I see in the media at first. That's my starting point, is not to believe any of it. When it's about us, I don't care what it is. I don't believe it. The first shot out of the gun. So here is Barnes Boyle. He is the manager of the Gadsden, Alabama mall that supposedly banned Roy Moore. And this was on WBRC TV Tuesday in Birmingham, Alabama.
Sure, it's part of that job. Yeah, we did have written reports and things. So, but to my knowledge, he was not banned from the mall.
So, yeah, we had reports that he was running around chasing skirts and stuff, but not to my knowledge, he was not banned from the mall. Well, how much of the story has been based on the fact that he was? And then we have the parking lot behind the diner that doesn't exist. And now we've got the likely forged signatures on the yearbook. It turns out that one of his assistants signs his name a lot of times, and she puts her initials. D.A. When she signs his name, she draws a little slash and puts D.A. And everybody thought that that was Roy Moore being an egomaniac, signing his name / district attorney. That's not. It was his assistant or somebody else signing for him and signifying that she was signing and not him. And the accusers, one of the accusers is saying, yeah, he signed it. Look, and he's such an ego freak, he put DA next to his name for district attorney. No, it means he didn't sign it. Your yearbook. Now, in the Roy Moore situation, the accuser, one of the accusers, Beverly Nelson, on her divorce dismissal, Moore's assistant, Delbra Adams, put her initials DA next to a signature stamp that she used for Moore. Stamped the signature, and she put her initials, her name is Delbra Adams, to signify that she had stamped the signature. It wasn't his. The DA in the yearbook looks like the divorce decree. Beverly Nelson in this yearbook, it looks like the same thing. He's out there claiming that Moore signed the yearbook and so forth, but in the yearbook, it's the same stamp with the DA next to it. Moore presided over Beverly Nelson's divorce from her then-husband in 1999. She failed to mention this at the press conference. And by the way, MSNBC, I kid you not. No, we have a ban on what goes on there, so I'm not going to play it. Just don't doubt me. MSNBC actually had an infobabe reporting on the Franken grope of Leanne Tweeden in the photo on the C-17. They parsed the grope, and they at MSNBC concluded that it wasn't a real grope, that he never really touched her. It was an act. It was not a real grope. They're parsing the grope over there. Big, big, big mistake, you people. Big mistake. But at Slate.com, Al Franken should resign immediately. That is the headline at Slate.com. Oh, by the way, Claire McCaskill is now making a big show of returning $30,000 that she got from Franken's PAC. You know, they donate to each other's PACs there in the Senate, and Franken's PAC sent her campaign had sent her PAC $30,000. She's now giving it back or redirecting it somewhere. But Slate.com, Al Franken should resign immediately. The subheadline is Democrats' credibility on sexual harassment is at stake. Bingo. Their credibility. I mean, look at the people they've destroyed or tried to. Clarence Thomas, Roy Moore. I mean, you name it, the list is endless. But yet, who are the real harassers? And at least this guy, Mark Joseph Stern at Slate, knows the drill. If you're going to give Franken a pass, we can't go after Roy Moore or anybody else, even Trump. So that's just the first. We'll see what happens with this as it continues to unfold here. Eric in Ambler, Pennsylvania. Welcome, sir. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's good to talk to you, and I'm glad to get there. I've got a serious topic I want to speak about. With Judge Moore, a little bit different take than what most people have been talking about. I had a stepdaughter. She injured her neck when she was 14 years old, and was not allowed to take physical education classes after that, but had to go to the person who was considered as the athletic trainer of the school. And one day, while he had her on the table, he stuck his tongue down her mouth, and he grabbed her breasts and filled her up. She never said a word about this for 4 years, and finally she came home right before her mother and I got married, and she told her mother about what had happened. Her mother went back to the school, talked to the superintendent. Well, it's her word against the teacher's word, so there's nothing to go. Well, this went on through the years. She had good days. She had bad days. She'd take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Never could get control of her life. And at age 48, she took her own life. She never regained from it. Now, the point of this call is that what about these women who are claiming that Judge Moore did similar type things to them? How have their lives been? Have they been picking themselves out of the sewers every other day and trying to make something of their lives? You know, it's easy to just come forward. As you always say, it's the seriousness of the accusation. So, you know, we lived through counseling, sitting around the table, talking for hours and hours and hours and hours to try to help her through this. And she could never could regain her own dignity. It was taken away from her.
This happened to her when she was 14 and injured and had to get sort of her phys ed training from the trainer because she couldn't participate in actual class.
Correct.
Right. So she was alone with this guy.
Right.
And you're saying she committed suicide at 48 and she really never recovered from it in terms of her self-esteem and dignity, right?
Never. And
so what you're asking is, are any of the women leveling similar charges against Judge Moore, were they similarly affected?
Correct.
Well, I don't know. Here's what we'd have to know in assessing something like this. We would have to be able to say with some sort of statistical certainty that incidents like this that happen to 14-year-old girls do result. In other words, the results or the effect on your stepdaughter are common. I don't know that we know that. But still, it's a good question. You're looking at these women. They don't appear to be adversely affected by it. I'm guessing that's what you're saying, or you wouldn't.
Well, my point is that the press could easily gather information about them, but have they looked into their past to see what if a girl was sexually assaulted when she's 14, she doesn't get over that.
Well, but they're not going to do that.
Well, no, certainly, but they should. If it was going to be responsible.
Well, but the problem, not everybody probably reacts the same. I'm not. Don't misunderstand. We would just have to know that if that kind of abuse at that age is something that lasts a lifetime or takes a lifetime of effort to overcome, there probably are, depending on who you talk to, there are people who are able to get past it and function normally, and others who never are able to. But I don't know if there's a standard that you could say.
No, I mean she would go for a period of time and just she was a registered nurse and she would be outstanding, and all of a sudden her life would fall apart again.
Right. Did she ever get married?
She married twice.
Right. And so are you at all curious about these women because of the experience you witnessed here? Are you
correct?
Yeah. And so are you inclined to question these women's stories because of what you saw in your own family? That you're not necessarily seeing any signs of in these women, and so you're maybe doubting them?
Bingo. You got it.
Right.
Yes, you've got it right there. And, it's easy to come forward. Well, he did that, and, that's that. But what is their lives? How they live their lives?
Well, the one thing that we're told, look, you've got a point here, because we are told that this kind of abuse and taking advantage of young girls at that age, 14, does have lasting effects. We're told that there's enough evidence that the quote-unquote experts tell us this. It's one of the things among many that's very bad about it, is that the long-term negative impact it has on the victims.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, one of the women that appeared with Gloria Allred this week was unloading tears throughout the entire appearance. She even had tears in her nostrils. I saw that reference in a news story as evidence that they were real. That's a tough thing. That's got to be even tough for you to call here and talk about that. It's a legitimate question, too. People want to see evidence in allegations like this. I guarantee you people that are going to vote for Roy Moore want to know whether this is true or not. Others don't care whether it's true or not. They just want it used to get rid of him. But people are going to vote for this guy, or intending to, would like to really know if this stuff's on the up and up or not. Because the press was never. That's right. They didn't care about Paula Jones or Juanita Broderick. I guarantee you. That's his point here. They don't. When there's no political point to be made, like that, they purposely ignored Juanita Broderick and poo-pooed her allegation that Clinton raped her. And Paula Jones is just the result of what you get dragging a dollar bill through a trailer park. So it's, hey, look, they've politicized so much of this stuff, Eric, that it's difficult to ever get really down to the truth of it. But I really appreciate your call. I understand your doubts. I totally understand the way you'd be looking at this. We have to take a brief time out. We'll be back and continue in just a moment. Here's Bill in Lynchburg, Virginia, with an interesting question. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great, Rush. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I've been a listener since 1988, and I know I'm going to get right to it, but I wanted to let you know that now I can mark one thing off my bucket list. But my question is, who took this picture of Al Franken and Leanne Tweeden?
I had the same thought about this, because that person knows, that person was in on it. That person had to, and there was an official photographer, by the way, and Leanne Tweeden talks about the official photographer who got on board the plane and started taking pictures, because there's always a documentary made, a video of each USO tour that is assembled and put together, and it has an official photographer that gets all the background and candid shots, and that's who this was. And clearly that person had to be in position and knew full well what was happening. What we don't know is whether Franken summoned the photographer over, or whether it was like the old boys club. Hey, Al summoned, get a picture of this. Look what I'm doing away with here. Look what I'm doing. And grab a picture of it. But that person would know, should there ever be an ethics inquiry. Bill, thank you much, and I appreciate being a bucket list person. I'm flattered to no end. We could take bets. Will Franken resign first to spend time with family, or resign to go to sex rehab? Or will he not resign? Make your bets, and we'll be back tomorrow. Wrap up another busy broadcast week. See you then.